Welcome to ePathshala. Myself Richa, working as an assistant professor in the Department of Political Science in MCM DAV College, Chandigarh. The name of my topic is Liberal and Welfare State. So, when we are discussing about the liberal state, first of all, we should know the meaning of the state, that the state has four essential elements, that is the population, fixed territory, government and sovereignty. And when we are discussing about the functions of the state, we can say that the liberal is divided into basically in two parts. One is the positive liberalism and second one is the negative liberalism. The thinkers which are associated with the negative liberalism are, that is the Bentham, the Herbert Spencer and Adam Smith. They believe that the state should be given minimum functions so that the individual should work properly. And the thinkers of the positive liberalism are that are J.S. Mill, T.H. Green, MacIver and Lasky. They believe that the state should interfere in the activities of the individual life so that the state should be given more and more functions. So they are of the belief that the state should be given welfare functions, like to give recreational activities to the individual, to provide various opportunities to the people, so that the state should involve in individual life and individual progress fully. The objective is to understand the functions of a liberal state and to know the role of a welfare state, and to become familiar with the welfare initiatives of a liberal state, and also to find out the limitations of welfare state in developing countries and to give suggestions to achieve the ideas of welfare state. A welfare state is a state in which the government plays a very important role in protecting as well as promoting the well-being of its citizen in the economic, political and social sphere. This type of state is a combination of democracy as well as capitalism. The thought behind the foundation of such a state is minimum or no inequality and also an equitable distribution of wealth. It also advocates and practices equality of opportunity as well as offering minimum provision for a decent life. The early 19th century was characteristic by laissez-faire or individualism, in which the government as an agent of the state was given minimum functions, that is, to protect the citizen from external as well as internal danger. The advocates of this theory believed that the individual was in better position to judge his interest than any government. In the economic field, they believed in open competition. This theory is also known as negative liberalism, and it is believed that it is beneficial for the individual and for the society to let the individual alone. Government is a joint stock company for mutual assurance. Its national function is to hinder hindrances. Its interference in any other aspect of life is unnatural and socially harmful. This belief was popular in England from 1750 to 1850, and then it faded away because of some inherent drawbacks. In the long run, however, laissez-faire proved disastrous to the community. Its social cost outweighs its economic gains. Long hours of labor, inadequate wages, overcrowded factories and insanitary arrangements, these were the lot to which the workman had to submit. The state was made to set up, seeing the exploitation of the common workers. Realization dawned that laissez-faire was successful only when everybody had the same bargaining power. The workers were exploited by those who had immense resources at their disposal. The state had to assume a greater moral responsibility to protect the weak and vulnerable. This led to the positive liberalism, which advocates an active role of the state to see that there is an equitable distribution of resources. Opponents of the welfare state holds that the only justifiable mechanism for allocated resources is the market. On this view, individuals are free, only free when they are not prevented by the state from disposing of their resources as they choose. Priorities is placed on the autonomy of civil society and the domain of negative freedom. Thus, the welfare state has many advocates for the feel that every individual has a right to a decent life where no one should lack the basic needs. After the experiment with laissez-faire, The need for the state to balance the conflicting interests were needed. Thus, the state stepped in. Keynes and Beveridge were liberal architects of the welfare state in Britain. They were ideologists of the ideas of indicative economic planning and the provision of comprehensive welfare measures to ensure individuals have a secure platform on which to build their freedom. The liberal welfare state doesn't give services to its citizens as charity, but as a right of each individual. The state has to ensure that each citizen has the freedom of choice and can exercise the choice. Welfare state in developing countries. The role of the liberal welfare state in a developing country is very challenging. Initially known as the Third World in the last century, these countries were infested with many problems. A majority of them were colonies and had been badly exploited. Poverty, ignorance, illiteracy, lack of infrastructure were just a few problems in the long list. Each problem had to be tackled tactfully without ruffling too many features. The latter was not possible because there was concentration of wealth in the hands of a few who were reluctant to part with their assets. The local elite, which had risen, wanted progress and development, but on their own terms. The leadership of these countries were in a quandary as to the role of the state. The concept of welfare state appealed to all, yet its implementation was a problem. Rigorous steps would have to be taken to fulfill the idea of welfare state because it was a need of the hour. Welfare state was a worldwide phenomenon and as discussed above, debates were ranging among political scientists as to the exact role of the state. But a majority in the Western world were convinced that welfare state had to be a reality. However cumbersome it was for carrying out welfare activities meant extra burden on the state exchequer of every nation. In India, for example, the concept of welfare state was incorporated in the Indian Constitution from Article 36 to 56 in the directive principle of state. The Indian government faced the stark reality of tackling poverty, illiteracy, malnutrition, high infant mortality, etc. The state started making amends. The Indian state decided to tackle these problems by floating various plans. When India got its independence, the economic conditions of the country was miserable. There was a big gap between the haves and have-nots. Property and resources were in the hands of privileged few. The Indian state decided to act because there were many social evils like sati, child marriage, female infanticides, etc. prevalent in the society. With a low socio-economic development, the efforts was to establish socio-economic democracy in India. The 5-year plans, floated after every 5 years by the government, tried to balance all the regions of the country and develop them. The state ensures adequate means of livelihood for all and also fair distribution of resources for the common social good, stressing on equal pay for equal work for both men and women. The government tries to secure participation of the workers in the management of factories. The state also endeavors to give right to work to each and every citizen besides securing just and human conditions of work for everybody. Children's education has become a priority with the state by imparting free and compulsory education till the age of 14. Going a step further, the Indian welfare state also provides free midday meal to the children studying in government schools. Reservation for the weaker section of the society, particularly the scheduled caste and tribes, help them to able to merge into national mainstream. The government has fixed minimum wages and also started schemes like Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act and Swaran Jayanti Gram Swarozgar Yojana to help in rural employment. Steps have been taken to protect women, child and the vulnerable from exploitation. India is a liberal welfare state because it offers social, political and economic rights. Indonesia is another country that has decided to become a welfare state by passing a law to provide health insurance to all the 240 million citizens from January 1st, 2014. In the same law, it is planned to pay pensions and have insurance for workers who are accident victims. Though it will be a great burden on the state, China's health insurance cover more than 90% of the citizens in rural areas. Thailand introduced universal health care in 2001 and also introduced pension for the informal sectors, the sector most vulnerable to exploitation, in May 2011. South Korea has a long-term care and pensions for elderly. Singapore is offering more incentives and help to the aged and elder. Singapore model has to be followed, where they boast of the best school and hospital, yet the government spending is only 1/5 of its gross domestic product. The ancient countries have learned a valuable lesson from Europe. In the latter, the safety net has become a cushion in the long run. The Asian welfare state do not want to substitute hard work with cumbersome, flabby welfare schemes. The welfare states of Asia need to keep in mind the demographic factor for the population of this region is aging quickly. This means more pension and health facility should be rolled out. The huge income disparity in countries like India, Indonesia, and China make the idea of a welfare state a very difficult task. The social spending has to be monitored very carefully. In the Western countries, the ideas of a welfare state is a white elephant, discouraging many states. The country in the West, like Greeks and Spain, are knee-deep in debt. Until recently, the governments in Asia concentrated on welfare programs like education, building up infrastructure, etc. But now, the care for the aged also falls on the state, unlike the past when the governments depending on strong traditional family ties and looking after the elders. India has passed the Protection for Women from Domestic Violence Act 2005 and Maintenance and Welfare of Parents and Senior Citizen Act 2007. The former is to safeguard women within the four walls of her house, and the latter to safeguard the interest of the parents. Thus, while opting to become welfare states, the countries have to keep in mind the financial constraints so that they are not bogged down in the long run. On the other hand, South Korea proved to be a challenge to the dependency theory by getting itself tied to the international economy and also to the United States. It took the help from outside its border, but at the same time upgraded its industry with the help of debt rather than foreign investment. The state took up measures, land reforms, and emphasized on primary educations. The government overcame coordination failures and today boasts of an income greater than many countries. Singapore allocates limited public space without considering the size of the family. It has tried to limit maternity leave to 2 children and also by reducing income tax relief from 5 to 3 children. In 1984, it even went so far as to give special priority in the school admissions to all the children born to women with a university degree while penalizing non-degree holding women with more than 2 children. A welfare state takes such steps so that there is a less burden on resources and an equitable distribution of resources. States in Asia have been more active and positive in welfare activities as compared to Africa. The welfare state in Asia believe that state intervention is essential for growth. Development, either economic, social and sustainable, without an effective state is impossible. It is increasingly recognized that an effective state, not a minimal one, is central to economic and social development, but more as a partner and facilitator than director. States should work to complement markets, not replace them. In Latin America, the welfare states are considered in transition. Following the Bismarckian model, Chile, Argentina, Uruguay initiated the welfare programs, also known as emerging welfare states. The government provides pension, health facilities and other social sciences. In Argentina, the government is spending more on welfare programs. There are about 60 different welfare programs, not to just feed the impoverished people, but with the aim that there will be upward mobility of the people. It offers a lot of benefits to those who lose their jobs. Pensions under two scheme enables men to get pension as they reach 65 and women at the age of 60. The disabled get separate pension. Women are given maternity benefits. The increased social spending by Argentina has been highlighted by the World Bank too. Children have benefited from various schemes. Children from low-income families get allowances. The effort is to end poverty and share prosperity. Uruguay often declared as South America's first welfare state because it extended the welfare activities to healthcare, social security, and public education. The increase in spending on children led to a decline in infant mortality. The state pension scheme was started in 1919, yet Uruguay is being called a sick welfare state because of the endless strike that have racked the country. There are some who call it a country on permanent strike. Too much of government interference has pushed the economy on sickly days. The strikes have wasted many man-hours, uncounted millions of dollars. China has transformed itself from an economy which was funded by the government funding to one regulated by the market subsidies and benefits. The scheme under President Allende was changed under Augusto Pinochet military junta that lasted till 1988 when the Chilean people rejected the latter in plebiscite. The welfare spending in Chile is on the rise but keeping the globalized economy in view. The elite in Brazil welcomed the welfare state steps to eliminate poverty, for it was embarrassed by the big gap between the rich and the poor. President Lins Silva launched the social program in 2002. Children were sent to schools and were also vaccinated in the schools. The program was known as Bolsa Familia, and it uplifted many and inequalities was minimized to a great extent. People were given money by which their purchasing power was increased. It took a record number of people from a situation where they did not get water, shoes, or proper services to a life of dignity. The critics of such spending say that it has driven the Brazilians to become consumerist and at a greater risk to the environment. In Argentina, the government supported large-scale liberalization and privatization program in the mid-90s that seemed to benefit the country. But by 2002, the economy collapsed. The government became an example of bad equilibrium in Argentina. Welfare state in Africa. The liberal welfare state has not been able to make giant strides in Africa. Unlike Asia, Africa is lagging behind because of many factors. The market has failed to some extent, but Africa's dependence on foreign aid and on other actors, governmental as well as non-governmental, is excessive. The state itself is weak, and so is the market. Lack of political stability does not attract many players in Africa. Special interest group captures power and dominate to fulfill their vested interest. The African state is soft and partial to the local elite and the other vested interest. Lack of initiative has led to the poor performance by the state and has further led to poverty and unemployment. Lack of technical expertise also hinder international development. Poverty, ignorance, and disease are ironically called the Holy Trinity, and efforts are made to eradicate them. The first generation of nationalist leaders were committed to welfare activities, but a period of lull followed. But at present, the young leadership talks about economic growth and expansion of welfare activities. In the past, fragmented society were the norm in Africa, where there is less political participation and distribution of public goods. The local elites, in conflict with each other, captured all the benefits. It continues to some extent even these days. One of the reasons for the lack of state action is that the colonial power drew the boundaries, making the carving of the new sovereign state But geography is not the right way for making states in a multi-ethnic society in Africa, where ethnic identity is very strong and intense. The liberal welfare state can be more effective in Africa when the army, police are institutionalized, their powers are clearly demarcated, and the judiciary become independent. But Africa has embraced the concept welfare state. Though the African National Congress was initially against handouts, yet it has tried to evolve into a party that talks pro-poor. In Africa, the state has undertaken and continues to take many housing initiatives. Health sectors and education are public domain. The state believes in social assistance and not social insurance. Children have been receiving more assistance. There are several special facilities for orphans. Old age provisions are given, drought relief is given, while unemployment and hunger are serious issues in Africa. The state is endeavour to minimize these. Antiretroviral drugs are provided to people and they are kept alive. Massive budgets are allocated to these drugs. Setting up public sectors were emphasized in African countries in the last century, but they are moving towards privatization because of the failure of public concern. Often countries like those in Africa with severe shortage of skilled human resources have tended to put greater emphasis on public sector initiative and state-run enterprises on the assumption that limited skilled manpower can be best used by coordinating rather than fragmented administrative and entrepreneurial activities. But the failure of public concern in countries like Kenya, Tanzania, etc. have led to a thrust in privatization. There are many states in Africa that are called failed state because the states have collapsed as they have not been able to control violence, remove corruption, provide infrastructure, or invest in human capital. Zambia has a population that is poor more in rural areas. Malnutrition, poor health and education level added to the woes. Agriculture was stagnant as Zambia policy was against agriculture in the past, but now the government has started an aggressive stabilization program. The government is fostering growth and reducing poverty. The government has initiated poverty surveys to point out the problems. Zambia has given antiretroviral drugs to more than 70% of its people. Carrying on the agenda of social assistance are countries like Ethiopia and Malawi. Cash transfers, also called social grants, are on the cards. There is a shift from food aid to cash transfers. In the end, I can conclude that welfare state provides the various facilities to the human beings, as well as if the state will interfere in the life of the individual, then the individual can develop properly. Various facilities are provided by the state. Even we can say that in the developing societies, the problems of unemployment and poverty can be removed by having, if the state will interfere in the life of the individual. But various critiques is of the opinion that the welfare state is a wrong concept because it makes the human beings, it makes the man a very lazy person. The human being will totally depends upon the state and he will not do a work according to them. So they will force the state to do their work and they become lazy. Thank you very much.